Daniel Reeves had never liked places that felt too quiet for their size. As his car rolled slowly through the towering iron gates of the Ashford estate, he felt the same unease settle in his chest again. Beside him, his 9-year-old daughter, Lila, pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, is this where Mrs. Ashford lives?" "She's really rich, huh?" she asked softly. Daniel forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Just be polite, okay? We won't stay long." The mansion rose ahead like something from a dream, marble pillars, glass balconies, fountains spilling water like silver threads. A uniformed guard opened their door. Lila clutched Daniel's hand as they walked inside. The air smelled like lilies and polished wood. Then she saw it, a massive portrait hanging above the grand staircase. She stopped walking. "Daddy," her voice dropped to a whisper. Daniel followed her gaze and froze. The painting showed a young girl, about Lila's age, same eyes, same smile. The resemblance was terrifying. Before he could speak, a calm but icy voice echoed behind them. "You must be Mr. Reeves." Daniel turned. Evelyn Ashford stood there in an elegant ivory dress, her posture perfect, her face composed, but her hands trembled slightly. Her eyes moved slowly from Daniel to Lila. The color drained from her face. "Oh my God," she breathed. Evelyn Ashford struggled to maintain her composure as she approached them. "What is her name?" she asked, her voice softer now. Daniel frowned slightly. "This is my daughter, Lila." Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came out immediately. She knelt slowly in front of the girl, studying her face with unsettling intensity. "Hello, Lila," she whispered. Lila smiled politely. "Hello, ma'am. Your house is very big." Evelyn let out a shaky laugh. Yes, it is." But her eyes were glassy, distant, almost haunted. She stood abruptly and walked toward the portrait. "Do you see that painting, Mr. Reeves?" she asked. Daniel nodded cautiously. "Hard to miss." Evelyn folded her arms tightly. "That girl, her name was Alara." Daniel stepped closer. "Was?" Evelyn swallowed. "She died many years ago." Silence swallowed the room. Lila looked between them, confused. "Daddy, why does she look like me?" Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Evelyn turned slowly, her gaze piercing. "How long have you been married to your wife?" "Miranda?" Daniel stiffened. "How do you know my wife's name?" Evelyn hesitated, then spoke words that shifted the air itself. "Because Miranda and I knew each other very well. A long time ago." Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken. "What does that have to do with my daughter?" Evelyn's eyes dropped to Lila again, trembling. "Mr. Reeves, have you ever considered that she might not be yours?" The drive home felt longer than the journey there. Daniel barely spoke, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. Lila noticed. "Daddy, did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. His heart broke instantly.
"No, baby."
"Never. You did nothing wrong." She nodded but looked out the window again, unusually silent. Daniel's mind replayed Evelyn's words over and over like a curse. "She might not be yours." That night, after tucking Lila into bed, he stood at her doorway watching her sleep. "You're my daughter," he whispered under his breath. No matter what. But doubt had already entered his bones. Downstairs, Miranda Reeves sat on the couch scrolling her phone. "You're back late," she said casually. Daniel studied her face carefully, searching for cracks. "We met Evelyn Ashford today." Miranda's hand froze slightly before she forced a laugh. "Oh, how is she?" Daniel walked closer. "You tell me." "She said you two knew each other." Miranda stood quickly. "Daniel, that was years ago. It's irrelevant." He narrowed his eyes. "She also suggested something else." Miranda's voice sharpened. "What did she say?" Daniel paused. "She said Lila might not be my child." The silence that followed was deafening. Miranda's face went pale, not angry, not confused, but afraid. Miranda turned away quickly, pretending to adjust a vase on the table. "That woman is insane," she muttered. Daniel didn't move. "Look at me and say that again." She faced him, forcing irritation. "She's lying, Daniel." Why would you even entertain that? He stepped closer. Because of how you reacted just now. Miranda folded her arms defensively. I reacted because you're accusing me. Daniel's voice dropped. I didn't accuse you, she did. Miranda laughed nervously. So you believe a billionaire stranger over your wife? Daniel watched her carefully, the trembling fingers, the refusal to hold eye contact. I believe behavior, he said quietly. And yours is suspicious. She snapped. Oh, please. You're being paranoid. But Daniel had already started noticing things, the old bank alerts he'd ignored, the late-night deleted chats, the unexplained transfers years back. That night, while Miranda slept, he opened her old storage boxes in the study. Receipts. Old photos. Documents. Then he found it, a faded picture of Miranda standing beside Evelyn Ashford and a man Daniel had never seen before. They looked close. Too close. On the back was a handwritten note. For what we built together, R. Daniel stared at the letter, dread settling deeper. Who is R? He whispered to himself. The next morning, Daniel moved carefully, hiding his storm behind routine. He packed Lila's lunch, braided her hair, something Miranda usually did. Daddy, you're quiet, Lila said. He smiled gently. Just work stress, pumpkin. After dropping her at school, he didn't go to the office. Instead, he drove to a private medical laboratory across town. Sitting in his car, he stared at the building for nearly 10 minutes. If I do this, everything might change, he murmured. But Evelyn's trembling face haunted him. Finally, he stepped out. Inside, the receptionist greeted him warmly. How may we help you, sir? His voice felt foreign as he spoke. I want to run a confidential DNA paternity test. Hours later, back home, he carefully collected samples, a strand of Lila's hair from her brush, his own swab sealed in an envelope. As he packaged it, his hands shook. Please let this be wrong, he whispered. That evening, Miranda noticed his distance again. Daniel, what is going on with you? He looked at her, long and hard. The truth is coming, he said quietly. One way or another. Miranda's face tightened with fear she could no longer hide. 3 days passed like 3 years for Daniel Reeves. Every ring of his phone made his heart slam against his ribs. At work, he stared at documents without reading them. At home, he watched Miranda carefully, noticing every nervous glance, every forced smile. On the third afternoon, while sitting alone in his office, his private phone buzzed. The caller ID displayed the laboratory's number. His throat went dry instantly. He hesitated before answering. Mr. Reeves, the lab technician said gently. Yes, this is Daniel, he replied, his voice barely steady. Your confidential DNA analysis is complete. Would you like the results emailed or verbally summarized? Daniel closed his eyes. Tell me now. There was a pause, the kind that carries bad news. The probability of paternity is 0%. Silence crushed the space around him. Daniel didn't speak. He couldn't. The technician continued softly. Genetically, you are not the biological father of the child. The call ended, but Daniel remained frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. His chest tightened painfully as memories flooded in. Lila's first steps, her first word, the nights he stayed awake when she had fevers. No, he whispered hoarsely. No, she's my daughter. But science had spoken, and the truth had split his world open. That evening, Daniel sat in the dark living room when Miranda walked in. She sensed the shift immediately. Why are the lights off? She asked cautiously. He didn't answer. She flipped the switch and froze. Daniel sat holding a sealed envelope. What's that? She asked, though fear had already filled her voice. He placed the paper on the table. DNA results. Miranda's knees nearly buckled. Daniel, he looked up slowly, his eyes red but dry. 0%. The words landed like gunfire. Miranda covered her mouth, tears spilling instantly. I can explain, she began. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. Explain what? 9 years of lies. She sobbed. I was going to tell you. He laughed bitterly.
When?
At her wedding. Miranda dropped to her knees. It meant nothing. It was one mistake. Daniel's voice turned cold. One mistake doesn't produce a child. She shook her head frantically. You don't understand. It happened before we were stable, before we had money, before everything changed. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Who is he? Miranda hesitated, and that hesitation told him everything. Who is he? He roared. Through tears, she whispered the name. Roman Ashford. The name hit Daniel like lightning. Ashford, he repeated slowly. As in Evelyn Ashford? Miranda nodded weakly. Roman is her husband. Daniel staggered back, disbelief washing over him. You had an affair with a billionaire's husband? Miranda cried harder. It wasn't an affair the way you think. I knew Evelyn first. We were business partners years ago. We were building an investment firm together. Daniel remembered the photo, the note signed R, and Roman, he pressed. Miranda wiped her tears. He funded our company. We worked closely, too closely. One night, after a deal celebration, it happened. Daniel's jaw tightened. And Lila? Miranda's voice broke. I didn't know I was pregnant until months later. By then, Evelyn and I had already fallen out. The company collapsed. Roman cut contact. I never told him. Daniel stared at her in stunned silence. So, you let me raise another man's child, while you hid the truth? Miranda reached for him. I was afraid you'd leave. He stepped back. You should have been afraid of this day instead. Daniel left the house that night, without saying another word. He drove aimlessly until he found himself parked outside the Ashford estate again. The gates opened after he announced himself. Evelyn received him in the same grand hall, but this time, her face showed no surprise. You know, she said quietly. Daniel walked forward, fury barely contained. Roman Ashford is my daughter's biological father. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Yes. He laughed bitterly. You knew the moment you saw her. Evelyn nodded slowly. She has his mother's eyes and his smile. Daniel's voice cracked with rage. 9 years. Did you think I deserved to know? Evelyn's expression hardened with pain. I lost my own daughter, Mr. Reeves. Seeing Lila felt like seeing a ghost. I was overwhelmed. He shook his head. That doesn't excuse silence. Evelyn walked to the portrait of Alara. Roman destroyed many lives with his secrets, mine included. I divorced him years ago, when I learned of his affairs. Daniel's fists clenched. Does he know about Lila? Evelyn turned.
No.
But he will if you choose. Roman Ashford returned from Zurich 2 days later after receiving Daniel's forwarded DNA results. The meeting took place in a private lounge inside the mansion. Roman was tall, controlled, intimidating, but the moment he saw Lila's photo on the table, his composure cracked. She's mine, he asked quietly. Daniel's voice was flat. Biologically, yes. Legally, emotionally, she's my daughter. Roman sank into his seat, stunned. I never knew Miranda was pregnant. Daniel leaned forward. That child had a father.
Me. You don't get to rewrite that.
Roman nodded slowly. I'm not here to take her. I just want to understand. Daniel studied him carefully. Understanding won't erase 9 years. Roman swallowed.
No.
But I would like the chance to support her future, financially at least. Daniel's jaw tightened. Money doesn't buy fatherhood. Roman accepted the blow without protest. Then tell me what does. Daniel's answer came, without hesitation. Presence.
Truth.
Loyalty. Things you and Miranda both failed at. Back home, Miranda watched Daniel pack a suitcase. You're leaving, she whispered. He didn't look at her. I need space. She cried softly. Are you taking Lila away from me? He paused.
No.
You're still her mother. But I need time to decide what we are now. Miranda stepped closer. Please don't destroy our family. Daniel finally faced her. You destroyed it the day you chose silence.
She sobbed.
Do you still love me? He answered honestly. I don't know what I feel anymore. That hurt more than anger. As he zipped the suitcase, Lila appeared at the doorway. Daddy, are you going on a trip? He knelt immediately, pulling her into his arms. Just for a little while, pumpkin. She hugged him tightly. Can I come? His eyes filled. Always. They drove to a quiet lakeside cabin Daniel had bought years earlier, away from wealth, lies, and portraits of ghosts. That night, Lila sat beside him on the dock, her feet brushing the water. Daddy. Mommy has been crying, she said gently. Daniel nodded. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt others. She looked up at him. Did she hurt you? He hesitated, then smiled softly.
Yes.
But that has nothing to do with you. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You're still my daddy, right? The question pierced him deeper than any DNA result. He pulled her close. I will always be your father. Nothing can change that. She smiled, comforted. In that moment, Daniel understood something powerful. Blood reveals truth, but love defines bonds. Weeks passed. Legal meetings began quietly, not for custody, but for separation. Miranda cooperated, broken by guilt. One afternoon, she visited the cabin. I don't expect forgiveness, she said softly. Daniel listened silently. But thank you for loving her the way you did. He replied calmly, the way I do. She nodded, tears falling again. You're a better parent than either of us deserved. Before leaving, she whispered, Roman wants to meet her someday. Only if you allow it. Daniel looked toward the lake where Lila laughed chasing birds. One day, he said, when she's old enough to understand. Months later, Daniel and Lila visited Evelyn again, this time peacefully. Evelyn knelt before Lila with gentle warmth. You remind me of someone very special, she said. Lila smiled. The girl in the painting? Evelyn's eyes softened. Yes. Lila held her hand innocently. You can talk to me whenever you miss her. The offer broke something inside Evelyn, but in a healing way. Daniel watched quietly, realizing pain had connected their lives in strange ways. Before leaving, Evelyn said to him privately, You are proof that fatherhood is not biology, it is devotion. Daniel simply nodded. 1 year later, Daniel drove along a coastal highway with Lila asleep in the passenger seat. The sunset painted the sky in gold and amber. His life looked nothing like it once had. His marriage ended, his certainty shattered, yet his purpose felt clearer. He glanced at Lila and smiled softly. You didn't come from my blood, he whispered, but you came from my soul. The betrayal no longer defined him. It had awakened him. As the car disappeared into the horizon, Daniel felt no need to look back, because family, he now understood, was not built by secrets or DNA, but by truth, choice, and unwavering love. Nearly 2 years had passed since the truth shattered Daniel Reeves' marriage, yet the echoes of that revelation still visited him in quiet moments. Life, however, had reshaped itself into something steadier. He and Lila now lived in a sunlit townhouse near the coast, smaller than the old family home, but warmer in ways money could never buy. One Saturday morning, while making pancakes, Daniel noticed Lila sitting unusually quiet at the kitchen island, her chin resting on her palms. You okay, Pumpkin? He asked gently. She hesitated. Daddy, can I ask you something? He nodded, setting the spatula down. Anything. She traced circles on the countertop nervously. At school, they're doing family tree projects. Like where you come from. Daniel pulled a chair beside her. And that's worrying you? She nodded slowly. If Roman is my real father, do I put you or him? The question was innocent, but it struck deep. Daniel took a breath before answering. You put the people who raised you, loved you, and stood beside you. She studied his face carefully. So, you? He smiled softly. Always me. Relief spread across her expression, and she hugged him tightly.
Good.
Because I don't feel different. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, holding her. Neither do I. But later that evening, alone on the balcony, he admitted to himself that the question meant Lila was growing, and with growth would come more truths to navigate. Not long after, Roman Ashford requested another meeting, this time not in secrecy, but with humility. Daniel agreed, setting clear boundaries. They met at a quiet seaside cafe, neutral ground far from wealth and power. Roman arrived without his usual entourage, dressed simply, almost cautiously. "Thank you for coming," he said. Daniel remained reserved. "You said it was important." Roman nodded. "I've kept my distance out of respect, but I wanted to say this in person. You gave that child a life I didn't even know existed. For that, I owe you more than money." Daniel studied him carefully. "What are you asking for?" Roman shook his head. "Not custody. Not recognition. Just permission to be someone she can know, someday. On your terms." Daniel didn't answer immediately. The ocean waves filled the silence. Finally, he said, "If you enter her life, it will be slowly, truthfully, and without disrupting her stability." Roman agreed instantly. "Of course." As they stood to leave, Roman added quietly, "You may not share her blood, but you are her father in every way that matters." Daniel didn't thank him, but he didn't reject the words either. It was the closest thing to peace they would ever share. Years later, on Lila's high school graduation day, Daniel sat in the front row, his heart swelling with pride as her name was called. She walked across the stage confident, radiant, carrying the strength of every truth she had grown up understanding. Miranda sat a few seats away, cordial but distant. Time had softened their pain into respectful coexistence. Roman attended quietly in the back, honoring the boundaries Daniel had set, offering only supportive distance. When the ceremony ended, Lila ran straight into Daniel's arms. "We did it, Dad," she beamed. He laughed, holding her tightly. "No, sweetheart, you did it." She pulled back, studying him with tearful eyes. "Thank you for never leaving me, even when you could have." Daniel's voice thickened. "There was never a world where I would." As photos were taken under the golden evening sun, Daniel watched the life he had fought to protect standing proudly before him. The betrayal that once broke him had long transformed into clarity, resilience, and purpose. Family, he knew now, was not defined by betrayal, biology, or buried secrets, but by the people who chose each other every single day. And as he placed his arm around Lila for one final photograph, Daniel felt complete, not because life had been perfect, but because love had endured where truth had once hurt the most.